Hi, and welcome to the Brohoyo podcast, the podcast about gacha in general and Hoyoverse games in specific. I'm your host, Steven, and this is my co host, David.
Hey everyone.
And this week, I'm going to prove that 4 stars are pointless in Hoyoverse games. Before we do jump in, though, there is one caveat to this argument, which is that ZZZ is not going to be included into it, primarily because ZZZ is less than a year old, and it would be unreasonable to assume that everybody who's playing that game as a free to play has two full teams of 5 stars. So, swipers might have the full 5 star teams, but as far as actual free to plays go, I wouldn't consider it reasonable to assume that they all manage to hit all of their 50/50s perfectly and get a full 6 character roster of 5 cost units. But with that caveat in place, I would argue that 4 star units are useless in Hoyoverse games. Um, so yeah, Dave, do you have anything that you want to start out with before I jump right into the
Well,
thesis
I,
statement?
I cannot wait to hear your argument on this and how forecasts are useless. I'll agree to your contention of yeah, ZZZ not being around for as long as Star Rail and Genshin. So I'll let you take it away and I'll be making some notes and then I will probably definitely have some pushback.
Fair enough. So I guess the starting point that I am going to bring up is the fact that at this stage of the game, in both Genshin and Honkai Star Rail, most of the roles that 4 star characters fulfill, they're competing directly with 5 cost equivalents, and the power budgets allotted to 5 cost characters is just so much higher, especially as we enter later patches. It's just so much higher than 4 cost characters that unfortunately they're fully aged out. There is a 5 star equivalent basically every 4 cost character or 4 star character available to you, and the only reason why you would be running a 4 cost equivalent character is that functionally you don't have the 5 cost that replaced it at this point. I think that this is somewhat by design on Hoyoverse to, they want you to pull, obviously. And I believe part of what kind of proves this is the fact that we really haven't been getting any 4 cost characters of note in either Genshin or in Honkai Star Rail within the past 6 months. I'm going to be honest, I don't think the entirety of Amorphous has had a 4 cost character drop. I could be wrong, I could be misremembering, but off the top of my head, I cannot name a 4 cost or 4 star character that has dropped in Honkai Star Rail since we've left Pinnacle. As far as Genshin goes, I know that we've had one or two, 4 star characters drop, but again, they've been so niche that they're functionally irrelevant for the vast majority of players. And primarily, the only reason why people are getting them, I believe, would be because you're pulling for a 5 star and you happen to get enough constellations to make them kind of worthwhile. I think there's deeper issues to that, but having laid out that first sort of point, I'll give you a chance to rebut.
So I'm trying to keep up with the notes here. So I made a couple notes. So your first contention and point is you're stating that they're outclassed by all 5 costs. There's a 5 cost, whatever their role is, that there's a 5 cost that does it better than them.
Mhm.
So for Honkai Star Rail, to your credit and to your point, yeah, I don't believe we've had a new 4 star unit. A Ironically, I don't think, and this is kind of my point to why they're not useless, in that I don't think we've had a new 4 star unit since Gallagher,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
I might be flip flopping the order of something, but in the vein of Gallagher,
Mhm.
um, he is one of the top tier units to use in a lot of MOC builds, and he has a lot of versatility in terms of being in whether it be like a super break team or be on caster's team type things like that. So in the most recent data to kind of prove uh, my claim here, we have MOC data usage rate from I think the last round of MOC, or maybe it was a couple months ago, maybe it was a month ago, so maybe it was last month. But he was on, he had a usage rate of 42.5%. So 43%.
Hmm.
So he had 43% usage rate in MOC, and on tier lists, I mean, for his role as a sustained support, while yes, there are some that heal or support better. So I'm thinking specifically like for break teams would be like
Hmm.
Lingsha, would probably be a little bit better. Um, you have others that maybe do healing or shielding better, like Adventuring maybe does shielding better per se. But in terms of like what he brings to the table, one of those four costs that is still extremely relevant with again a 42% usage rate in MOC. And your point being that they are outclassed by 5 stars. I think you can maybe make an argument for that they're outclassed for like some specific teams, but by no means do I think 42% is negligible. If we go,
Hmm.
I'll put that in comparison for other 4 stars in Honkai Star Rail, and then we'll talk a little bit about Genshin where you're I think just way wrong. So Herta, I pulled up Herta Serval in March 7th. Herta because she kind of got a little bit of a revitalization with release of the Herta
Hmm.
because there was some synergy there. But for Herta in MOC and the same time frame that I was quoting Gallagher from, we're sitting at 19%. So that just kind of put a little juxtaposition there. Serval also had a little bit of synergy there, down at 7%. And then March 5th in her Archer form being down at like 4%. So just kind of give you some ideas there as far as usage rates. If I take this a step further and I go into pure fiction or I go into apocalyptic shadow, Gallagher is still sitting in the 40% usage rates for those. So
Hmm.
40%, 41% in pure fiction, 46% actually in apocalyptic shadow. The Herta in pure fiction, because she shines in pure fiction, is also a 40% usage rate. But in Apocalyptic Shadow for that last round, she was about 26%. Um,
Can I
so yeah, go ahead.
step in real quick? So I'm not going to necessarily disagree that there's going to be higher usage rates for a lot of these characters because again, we have people who are constantly joining the game. They're not going to have the ability to fill out their roster.
Mhm.
However, I would definitely argue that while Gallagher is he's more than decent. He's good at his role of being a healer. The only reason why I think he's used as much as he is because people would rather spend their Stellar Jades on getting a new. I think that's a user side concern because again, Lingshaw straight up is better. Hyacinth, who should be coming out tomorrow after this goes live, is just a straight upgrade to him. Adventurine is a straight upgrade to Gallagher. Gallagher can do his job, but one of the things that I think a lot of users should be doing is looking to actually move out of using him because he's okay, but we're hitting, especially with the inflation that we're seeing with HP, the inflation we're seeing with damage, and so on and so forth. I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to keep up.
So
I'm
so here here
Mhm.
here we go. So I'm going to bring more data to kind of counterpoint that, and it's not fair to bring out a character that hasn't been released yet. We're not comparing with characters that haven't been released yet.
Fine. Continue.
But so you talk about you specifically mentioned Adventuring and Lingsha being better
Mhm.
outseeing them. So looking at MOC, looking at the data for MOC, um, and now I understand that this also speaks to the other characters on the team, not just the support themselves, but the fact that say the number one team, the best team
Mhm.
in the last MOC cycle was Castret, Remembrance Trailblazer, Tribby, Gallagher. Number one appearance rate was about 11.5%. Average cycles just under 7.
But
That was
again,
the
that's
number one.
appearance rate. That's not actual power.
But look at what is actual power, how fast things can get
Okay.
cleared, which is what MOC is about. Average cycles just under 7. 6.87 was the average. Second best team, sub out Tribby for Rune May, just under or just over 8.5. 8.56 were the average cycles. The number two team, in fairness, is Lingsha. Average cycles 9.48, just under 9.5. That's 3 whole cycles longer than Gallagher. Now, obviously, we're using different TPS. It enables a different play style. Yes, but the fact that Gallagher is in the quickest cycled team I think shows the relevance still of him as a 4-star. Now, to your credit, I think he's one of the very few 4-stars that has relevance. The Herda has some, or not the Herda, little Herda, splashes here and there with some teams, and then just compare it just to finish out the thought too with
Mhm.
Aventurine, ranked 7 in the last MOC with average cycles of 9.23. Now, when I say rank, I believe that maybe is based off of appearance rate, perhaps. But in terms of average cycles, Aventurine actually performing a little bit better with Robin, Topaz, and Phasia. But Gallagher's holding that number 1 spot, and it's a whole 2.5 at least, quick maths, 2.5 cycles faster. But again, I think he's one of the few exception, or I think he's the exception more so than the rule. To your point, so I'll give you most 4-stars. Yes, we do see a little bit of splashing of Serval. We see even Pela splashed in here and there too.
Mhm.
But Gallagher is the only still very meta relevant unit in Honkai Star Rail. Now, again, we may see Hyacinth come out. I know we're starting to see some content creators that have access to the creator server, which we unfortunately do not. They are able to test out and are starting to put out some videos about the numbers as they were on that private server. And yeah, there are some crazy things on the horizon, yes, but we'll wait to see what goes live and then ultimately what the synergy and such. Now, anything else there on Star Rail before I jump into Genshin where you're think just wrong?
I mean, if you're willing to give me the caveat, okay, fine, Gallagher is an outlier. I feel like I've made my point fairly strongly as far as that goes. I have other things to bring up, but we'll move to Genshin and we'll circle
Yeah,
back.
as far as being outclassed, because that's the point of this contention was they are outclassed by all 5-stars. Technically, Gallagher is not outclassed in terms of cycle when it comes to MOC and the such. So, but again, I think that's an outlier. So, to your broader point, you may be onto something. Now, moving over to Genshin, where you talk about they're relevant. We're not really using 4-stars so much anymore. While we do have more newer 4-con in Genshin than we've had in Star Rail, I think there's obviously still, the old national team, which is essentially all 4 costs plus Raiden Shogun. I think that still has a relevant place in the meta, but I understand, again, to your point, that's been out for a long time, and we've had definitely a lot more options in terms of the different elemental applications and such. But in terms of a newer unit that I think you're sleeping on, we recently had a 4-cost unit come out, and I'm going to mispronounce the name, but Ianson or Ianson.
Okay.
She was she's a 4-star electro polearm user. She's one of the heroes in Natlan. She's the short little white-haired
Yeah, I know who
unit.
you're talking about. Mhm.
Yeah. So she is an attack buffer. She's a support, and she plugs in and plays in a lot of teams. And as a support, she is probably one of the best units. And she can plug in and play. And we addressed the issue last week
Mhm.
about Natlan being in its own like window and how are they going to make them synergize with units outside of Natlan. But pairing her with, Mavica on a team or pairing her with Faressa, who had just come out on a hyper team, like there's not really any numbers that in terms of her in those roles. So I don't know
So,
if you're sleeping on her or what your thoughts are, because she's got the universal, she's a universal attack buffer, so it doesn't matter if it's a hyper carry team, an overload
mhm.
team, or an aggravate team. So she's not super niche. I think you may have mentioned that, but again, she's got a wide sort of uses, and she can almost rival Bennett, and if not just rival Bennett straight up. But what are your thoughts on her in terms?
So my thoughts are, and you might be right, I might be sleeping on her, but my thoughts on her were she is a Mavi land character buffer because of the Night Soul mechanic. That
Mm-hmm.
at least in general, the way that Genshin seems to be handling their 4-cost, I keep on calling them 4-cost, they're 4-star characters, is that seem to they seem to have hit a point where they're going, look, at least up through font 4-cost 4-star character. Gonna do it every time. 4-star characters just don't have the power budget to really be relevant outside of extremely niche cases where they are so hyper focused in design that they exist functionally for one team. they exist for one person. Now, again, might be sleeping on this newer character. I'll be fully honest, I didn't pull on that banner, so I haven't experienced her. I haven't really dug in and looked at her numbers. So could have missed her. But in general, each time a new four-star character comes out, I'm gonna do
Too
it.
much TFT. Go ahead.
I know it's way too much TFT. Each time a four-star character comes out, it's hyper focused as a single five-star character's support, where or it's done like I want to say her name is Charus or something like that. It's the Fontaine character that turns on Overload as a elemental reaction, where she works off of Overload and turns that into an actual functional elemental reaction. So, they tend to be hyper focused, hyper fixated on one very, very specific niche that, unless you are running a team dedicated to a single five-star character or a single very, very limited play style, you just, they don't function. That, you might as well, to a lesser degree, not have them. I don't want to say not have them in the game, but they exist to fill a gap that exists because you can't release, at least Genshin can't get away with releasing a five-star character, multiple five-star characters every patch in order to fill out team rosters in order to make certain playstyles work. In the same way that Gaming, or Gaming, however you pronounce his name, when he came out explicitly to help fill the gap of, okay, we need some sort of, not fall damage, jump damage, plunging. Thank you, plunging damage DPS. Yeah, we need to get a four-star variant of this, because not everyone's going to have something like, they're not going to have Zhao, they're not going to have Diluc, they're not going to have those characters potentially. So we have to give them a quote-unquote budget option for them to use. And so that's what it feels like, at least, four-star characters are used for. They're gap fillers. They're there to load out, and even the the power 4, the power 5 characters from 1.0 are starting to lose their luster. They're starting to get overrun by better options at the 5-star level. We're getting more supports that can do the things that they used to do. Sucrose was the first one that got power crept by Kazuha. Book Boy has Yelan. And yeah, you can put two of them onto the same team. I'm not going to necessarily say that that's not a possibility. The Abyss is built around having two teams, but you're making a conscious decision to choose one, a weaker version of that effect when you choose the 4-star character. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, somebody like Ian Sun is one of the few characters, I guess, that within that one that does have a lot of variance and isn't locked into synergizing on characters. Again, the Night Soul mechanic is kind of a miss with me, but I still want to give Ian Sun her due in terms of being a strong supporter, because you have overload teams with like Mavic, Official, Chevreuse, to your point, like you mentioned with her. But even outside of an Atlan character, you can put in Bennett, put in Clorind, and then Chevreuse. You have aggravate teams where, again, if you don't have Garessa, Nihita Baizu, you can put in Clorind. So it's not like it needs the Night Soul. And yeah, you mentioned Sucrose, yeah, being originally the budget, our budget Bard Archon, and then yeah, was outclassed by Kazuo when he came out. So I see what you're saying in that, and then I pulled up Chevreuse here just to kind of remind myself a little bit about Kit. And yeah, she's more of, like you said, focused on overloaded teams and reactions with elect such. But as far as other forecasts that maybe fit the rule here, that there aren't too many of recent memory. There are still some that are extremely, again, very relevant with the national team being out there. Being Bennett, being Jingling, and Book Boy, Jing Shou maybe out there. But yeah, Yelan is kind of the substitute for Jing Shou. But we don't necessarily have a 5-star Bennett in the fire department.
But as far as looking at our other elements, I mean, yeah, Geo doesn't have anything remotely in 4-star. I would say it was up there. Electro, outside of Ianson, you do have an option here with Kuki Shinobi being a solid supporter choice as well.
Yeah, primarily as a healer.
Yeah, healer support type. But that's
Yeah,
just it's just another 4-star that does have some
and,
relevance. And
and
unfortunately, I wish I could have found the statistics on some of these for varying. I was about to say MOC, but Viral Abyss. I just don't, unfortunately. But
well,
but those are some that come to mind when I think
and
Genshin.
to be fair, again, it's not like you can't slot these characters in and make them work. But if you look at the total roster, the total number of 4-stars, how many of them have just been duds? How many, for every Bennett, how many, who's the shield guy from Inazuma? I'm trying to remember his name. Oh, Toma. How many Tomas do we have? How many just sent out to die characters have there been at the 4-star level? Where yeah, you've got your power group, your power quad, that power 5 is what they used to be, but a number of them, like I said, have dropped off. But other than the power 5, the vast majority of those 4-star characters, to a certain degree, should might as well have not been in the game. Who outside of diehard fans, who's using Kave on a team?
So I just did a quick search because you had me curious about how many 4-star characters, right, are useless compared to the Power 5 as you referred to them. So I'm doing a quick count, and I may have missed one or two in this list. I was counting quickly, so there's not too much dead time. But there are 40 or maybe 45 forecasts on this list I pulled up here, and I'm on just for everybody can look the reference game8.co is what came up as a first answer in the Google here. So I went to the characters, other character lists, 4-star characters. It looks like about 45. Now they have a rating with them. They have their element and their weapon. So I'm going to run through the rating column, and I'll just spout off the ones that they consider to be SS tiers. We'll get a count of those, and I count S tier if you want as well. But
Yeah,
for
let's be
SS,
inclusive. We'll add the S tier.
Okay. And I'll still differentiate between the two, so we can get a total of SS and S, and then how much of SS. So obviously going in alphabetical order, the first one that we're going to come up on here is Bennett in the SS category. So if we're doing, keeping account on our fingers, we have Bruce is S. You have Gaming as S. You have Ianson as SS. So we're 2 and 2 right now. Ororon, the
Okay.
Electro Bow user, he's S, so that's 2 to 3 SS. Nobu, I mentioned, she's S. Sucrose, still S, so that's 2 SSs, and I'm up to 5 S's, I believe.
Correct. Yeah.
We got 2 more SSs to round out the national team, Jingling and Jingshou, so we're now sitting at 4 SSs and 5 S's. And so that's 9 out of 45 4-star units.
And I feel like some of those
into the SS cap.
And some of those S's I felt were being maybe a little bit overly generous, but
yeah, the ranking like that can be subjective, right? But in sense of a power dynamic and what it feels like. Does the comp feel powerful, or do you feel like you're clearing things quickly? That's how they denote. I don't know much about their ranking sources and such, so I'd have to go dive into how they get their numbers.
But as a quick and dirty,
But yeah, so that's 9 technically. So essentially 10 out of 45 maths out to little under 20% of them.
Yeah, I mean, it basically be about 20%.
Yeah, so 20% have meta relevance, and the rest are kind of duds unless you have an affinity for them or you like something about their personality or plot in the story, right?
Yeah.
Now I want to go back. So now that we got those numbers, I want to go back and compare that to 5 stars.
Okay.
So if you can give me a few moments, I'm going to pull up the 5-star list on the same website. So presumably they're using the same metrics. Count the total number of 5 stars, go through with SS's versus S, and see what that ratio comes out to. We're doing some live mathing here.
And really quickly, while you're doing that, I'm just going to give some predictions. I'm going to throw out my hypothesis before we do them. And my hypothesis is that regardless of the number, based off of kind of the ranking scale, I'm willing to bet we're going to end up with about 20% as well. Because my gut tells me that this site is grouping them into like top 5%, or like top 10%, next top 10%, et cetera, et cetera. That might be how they're doing it. If they're not, my other potential argument, depending on how things break out, would be that at least as far as 5-star characters go, I think we're going to see fewer, wouldn't see as many characters on the low end, the F rank or whatever. But again, I don't know how that site's ranking is done, but I'm hoping I'm giving you enough time now to have done at least a count.
We're
Okay,
good.
cool.
Thanks for the stall. So, for clarification, the lowest rank they have is D,
Okay.
D rank. And yeah, I know with some of these sites when they do rankings like this, especially when it comes to gacha games, there's sometimes a case of they don't want a certain like the stands of that character to come and give them hate or something if they rate their waifus too low or something like that. Excuse me. So that's potentially a factor. But to get back into it, there are 60 5-star characters on this list here is what I did a quick count of. So again, I may be plus minus one. But for the sake of easy maths, 60. And then going through here, we have just do the same count. First S is going to be Alhaitham, SS Arlecchino, so we're 1-1. Baizu S, Chaska S, Chiori S, Citlali SS, Chlorind S, so I'm sitting at 2 SSs and 5 S's, I believe, already. Emil S, Escoffier, the newest unit, SS, or 3 and 6. Farina SS, OS. If you can keep track of the S's for me.
Yeah, that's what I've got it.
Thank you. Jean S, Kazuha SS, Niche S, Liney SS, Mona S, Mualani S, Hida SS, Navia S, Nualet SS, Nilu S, Raiden Shogun S, Shenhe S, Varesa S, Withersley S, Jinya S, Delonin SS, Yaimiko S, Yelan SS, Zhongli SS. So I got 6 SSs.
Yeah, we got 20 S's.
So 26 out of 60 is virtually half.
Yeah, almost 50%.
With the skew of 6 and 20 S's. So, which is a greater proportion there in the S and SS tier as it relates to the entire number, right? We're sitting at almost 50% are in SS or S rank compared to the forecast, which was, we said, sitting around, what, 20%? What did I say?
Yeah, it's 20% total.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think one of the points you made here about they slot in and they fit, but you're doing it at a less efficient rate. Numbers not as big, damage per screenshot, damage per second type stuff. I think that part of your argument can hold up, but to say that we only have had niche characters recently, and we don't have anybody of relevance as of recent, I think you're sleeping on some things. But I would have too, because again, the Night Soul stuff didn't hit with me. So, but I had to go back because I figured you were going to come in with a hot take today, and I was like, I got to be ready. So I got to give Ian-san her due.
Yeah, again, fair enough. I'm willing to admit that the most recent set of 4-star characters I haven't really been that hot on, because again, after so long, it seems like Hoyo, maybe they're finally turning around and they're giving us 4-star characters worth something. But for the majority of the history, it feels like they released the Power 4 and then they were terrified to ever create anything that might potentially rival them. Like they were too powerful. And so it created a power cap that 4-star characters just never were allowed to break out of. And, to be blunt, power creep has been hitting. And the further those 5 stars go up, the other 4 stars are they're capped out. They can't. You can't make a 4-star character that's more powerful than Bennett, because if you do, that new 4-star is gonna be more powerful than Klee, than Jean, than a whole host of 1.0 5-star characters. And that seems to be something that they were unwilling to do, which wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't for other power creep issues that we were running into. But at least in Genshin, it felt like there was definitely a hard cap. And then for Honkai, for Star Rail, there's been just so many 5-star characters that have coming out with very specific team loadouts that they're looking for, fully supported by other 5 stars, released in such a manner that it's just, yeah, acknowledging Gallagher as an outlier for a majority of these teams, it does feel like, you're only hobbling through while using 4-star characters. That, there is a clear and obvious upgrade for a lot of these teams to replace whatever your 4-star equivalent is. And I think part of the reason why Gallagher is so universal and well used is because he fills the sustain slot, which is, we've talked about it previously, it's a binary role. Either he can do it or he can't. As long as he can keep everybody up, he's technically done his job. I'm not going to disagree that he's not on fast teams, but again, throwing a potential hypothesis without digging further into the data, I am curious to see what the Eidolon level of the other units on that team are. Is it okay, I'm not going to bother whaling for, a sustain, or I'm not even going to bother pulling for a sustain so that I can whale harder on a DPS. I don't know. That's without getting into the data, that might not
let me
be
see if I can
relevant.
find it. Let me see if it
But
mentions it real quick as far as
yeah,
what the other units were. I don't believe that it did. But
yeah, I'm just
take
as a
look.
potential. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm fully willing to admit that I could just be grasping at straws, but that is one way that I could see the fact that he would be able to have the clear speeds that he does, is that if he's on teams with more heavily supported, higher Eidolon, higher.
So the data I'm looking at shows his Eidolon level and the skew there, which I think is pretty interesting actually, because even at E1, he's averaging under 8 cycle.
Okay.
E2 closer to 7.5, and then E6 is actually 7.6. So ironically, E2 is the lowest cycle number, but I think that, to your point, speaks to the answer that we don't have, and that would be the Eidolon levels of the other units.
Of the rest of his team.
Yeah.
So, and
Like,
again,
yeah, you may have an E2 Gallagher, but if you're sitting there with a E3 Robin versus an E0 Rob, yeah, the E2 Gallagher is going to perform better because it's being carried by the E3 Robin.
yeah,
as
and
opposed to
he's the
E6.
free healer that was given out to everybody. Like he is a free character. He's going to be on a lot of people's teams. But anyways, again, I'm willing to admit that Gallagher is an outlier. I'm wrong in that case, but I feel for the rest of the 4-star cast in Star Rail. Again, the last time that we saw a relevant 4-star was Gallagher himself, which was what, second or third patch of Pinacone. It's been almost a year, more than a year almost, since we've had a 4-star character, and it just seems like Brohoyo doesn't know what to do with them. That, do they exist as stopgaps for newer players to try out different team types and help build up those teams, or what? Because they're definitely not the cheaper option. Because you don't have the option to pull for them. Like you can't pick them out and go like, okay, I'm focusing on them. They tend to be actually more expensive to get multiple Eidolons for than they technically would be or potentially could be for 5-star characters. Which again, that was a discussion that we had way back. But yeah.
Yeah, and like so, and we aren't diving in as easy because the game is too young. Because there are definitely still some 4-star units up there that are pretty decent, pretty relevant. But I know that's not the argument you're making when you made this statement. So, but just for those that were interested or curious, just slide ZZZ in here so it doesn't feel like the redheaded stepchild and being left out of the discussion. 4-star units of relevance within ZZZ. Going to be Lucy or Nicole kind of as your supports. Piper is more your main DPS, and then most recently Pultra as a stunning unit. And then going back to launch, you have Sukaku as a support as well. And then the original Anby, who is the stunner at launch as well. But yeah, unfortunately for like Billy the Kid and Corin and Anton, pretty niche, just a role or two. But the other 4-cost units still showing some relevance, mostly Lucy and Nicole, but the others being good substitutes
until as we build the accounts, to your point of the game not being around that long for us free to plays, we maybe don't have resources to pull for 2 full teams yet. All right. Did you have any other contentions or points that you wanted to make as we discuss this debate? Because I know, speaking of new characters in ZZZ, we had some things to talk about, but I want to throw it back to you here as far as anything else to talk about on this discussion.
No, I think I built an Iron Man, enough of an Iron Man argument as I could for this, and is what it is.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. Well, because I think you have a fair point with Honkai Star Rail outside of Genshin, or I mean outside of Gallagher, and then in Genshin, I think you're just sleeping on some newer 4 stars. But that's going to do it for that discussion. And then I think we have some characters and some events to get to, so I want to touch on those here next. So discussing new characters first, we are looking at ZZZ with Hugo having dropped this week. He is going to be of the ice attribute, and he is an attacking type unit. And for those that are interested in the lore, or potentially the bonus, he's in the Mockingbird faction. So that is going to be Hugo to dive into his build really quickly. Again, for the W engine, outside of his signature weapon, you got me slipping here. I almost called them 5 costs, but they're not 5 costs. They are S rank W engines. So the S rank W weapons or W engines for him outside of the signature weapon would be Deep Sea Visitor, which would be Ellen's signature, Evelyn's signature weapon, the Heartstring Nocturne. Maybe you don't have any of those, but Zanshin Herb Case, Severed Innocence, Riot Suppressor Mark 6. That was Zuyan's signature weapon. If you don't have any of those, the best 4 cost, there I go doing it again, A rank W engine for him is going to be Marcado Desire. And then lastly, the final option there would be Gilded Blossom as another A rank free-to-play option for Hugo. Looking at the best drive sets, aka artifacts for him, we're going to be looking at the 4-piece set of the Hormone Punk, pairing that with either Polar Metal, Woodpecker Electro, would probably be 2 of the better options. Since there's 6 slots to get a 4-piece bonus, you're going to go from the Hormone Punk and then just pair that with the 2-piece from Polar Metal or Woodpecker. If you don't have Hormone Punk, you can just kind of go with the generic Woodpecker Electro set, especially if you're maybe looking at more crit scaling. Be using that Woodpecker Electro set and then pairing that with the 2-piece Polar Metal. So that 2-piece being Polar Metal is still going to be the primary 2-piece set you're going to want to pair with whatever 4-piece set you ultimately go for. For the main stats on the disc 4, we're going to look at crit damage or crit rate. For disc 5, you're going to want to prioritize ice damage, but if you can't find a good ice damage with decent substats, attack percentage or pen ratio percentage would be good for disc 5. And then lastly, on disc 6, going to look at that main stat, wanting it to be attack percentage. Substats, again, we're prioritizing crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, and then flat attack, and then penetration, kind of as those prioritizations there. But that's going to do it for Hugo. Let me see if I have any teams and synergies here. Theorized, we have a couple of options here. A double stun team, probably kind of the best choice for him here would be Hugo paired with Lighter and Lycian, like Count Lycian.
Lycian.
Also, you can substitute him out for names I can't actually pronounce, Trigger or King E. If you want to run a single stun team, again, running Hugo with Lighter or any of the 3 I just mentioned, and then just instead of running a second stun, you'd run a supporter like Astra Yao or Caesar. If you're like me and maybe you're low on resources and you are kind of limited in your choices, a free-to-play team would be him, Lycan, and Sukaku, who is the 4-cost demon frost-looking girl. So that's going to be kind of some examples team and essentially a quick Hugo rundown. But Steve, let me toss over to you for some of the events we have going on.
So we've got 2 events this week. The first is in Genshin Impact. It's Whirling Waltz. That's the story event for this patch. So you'll be able to play through it, get the crown, etc., etc. It's a larger event, so not a mini game. It's a series of mini games. Then for Zenless Zone Zero, the newest event that's going on at the moment is Springtime Snapshot, a photo taking event. So those will be the two ongoing events in Shin and ZZZ. So you can go out and get some or Hugo or Ex Coffier, I believe, is still should still be live, and Genshin, if those are who you're going for.
Right. So jumping outside of Hoyoverse, we do have a couple of other news pieces here going on in the Gacha world. So first thing I want to talk about very quickly, Girls Frontline 2 just recently announced their next global banner character is going to be Yu He. Bringing her over, she is a physical support unit who is going to be primarily used as a support in bossing content. For general content, let's be honest, we're all using Kluke. Like, let's be real. She trivializes a lot of that. So Yuhi is going to have the specific role as being a supporter for physical damaging units, predominantly in a single boss type scenario. So be looking out for her and an event. I'm sure that will surround her release. I believe she's also going to be getting a skin that will be purchasable with real money. And everything else that comes with a new event, Girls Frontline 2. I believe they're also updating the Covenant system. They're adding a Covenant option for Yuhi as well as Ulrid, who was the 5-star sword user, the only 5-star sword user that we had when the game launched. She was one of the first banners there on the global server. Other news, we officially have Persona 5 Phantom X pre-registration is available on the App Store, also Steam client. Looks like the game will be coming out to us towards the end of June 26th-ish, which is around the same time that our Pretty Derby, our horse waifu racing game essentially, is also going to be coming out that week or maybe even the same day. I know I talked about Pretty Derby last week. But I saw Persona 5 Phantom X, and I was like, oh, that date is going to be a busy date for me because I am looking forward to Persona 5 Phantom X because I love the Persona franchise, as we talked about that in one of our off-banner topics a while back, so you can check that out. And then I will also be checking out Pretty Derby, if not only for just the ridiculousness of the premise. So just wanted to let you know about that. In other news, we got an announcement that Tribe 9 has announced that they are end of servicing their global server. Now, it's the end of service isn't coming until end of November, essentially Thanksgiving. But the fact this game came out not that long ago, like I'm pretty sure it's less than 6 months, maybe even less than 4 months ago. And so for them to already announce a shutdown and end of service, granted not for a few more months, the game will last essentially almost a year when it shuts down, but to have an EOS roughly 4 months after launch is pretty quick, especially since the game has a Steam client. I thought it was going to stick around a little longer. But where something falls, other things are rising. So other news, Destiny Child, which was brought to us by Shift Up, the same developers who made Nikke, Goddess of Victory. Shift Up is teaming up with Com2uS to revive the Destiny Child IP. They will be bringing it back as an idle RPG. That's all the news I have on that right now. I don't have a timeline for it. I just caught wind of it, and I was intrigued by that because I do recall playing Destiny Child a long time ago when that first came out and being a Shift Up supporter with playing Nikke currently. So interested to see what the addition of Com2uS into the mix will do to the IP and the playstyle, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. Speaking of Nikke, new event, the 2.5-year anniversary did just end. However, we got a couple days left of a couple free daily polls that you'll get on the most recent banner for her. But we do have a new unit coming out which does not have free pulls on it. The new unit is Arcana, just came out. She is an Elysion electric rocket launcher unit. She is a burst 2 unit, but she does have a 40-second cooldown on the burst 2, which means she's not going to be able to single-handedly keep your rotations going as your lone burst 2 unit. You will have to pair her with another burst 2 to do that. I believe from scanning over her kit, she kind of has a very niche role. She essentially makes Isabel, who's a 3-star shotgun pilgrim, who's not been meta at all, has probably been debated as the worst pilgrim unit in the game. Arcana gives her a little bit more juice. I wouldn't say it skyrockets her into a meta of any kind, but if you are an Isabel enjoyer and like to use Isabel, Arcana is going to have some synergy with her. So that's going to do it for our other news. And we do want to thank you guys for joining us this week. Let us know down below your thoughts on 4-star units in the Hoyoverse games. Do you agree with Steve and they're completely useless, or do you have a little bit of pushback? Maybe you share some of my sentiments, or perhaps you have a different angle that we didn't discuss today on forecasts. But let us know down below. If you did enjoy the episode and you'd like to show your support, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. You can email us at brohoyopod@gmail.com with questions or suggestions for the show. And we also have the link to the Discord down there in the description, so you can join us over there for other news, game nights, and content notifications. Join us next week where we discuss gachas that are purely PvP and why they suck for free-to-play players and whale. But until then, keep gaming.
We made a choice, go fight against your fate.